So welcome to TechnoDadLife. In today's episode we're going to be installing Openmediavault, which is a Linux version on Proxmox, and why we're doing that is then we can basically virtualize all our servers on one machine, which is handy if you don't have lots of servers or you just sort of want things compact and don't want too much heat and noise. And so today you'll notice I don't have the blurry background, and so just out of curiosity, which one do you like, the blurry background or the non-blurry background where you can see all the different things there? If you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a like, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, and here we go now. So today we're going to install a VM in Proxmox, and so here we can see our summary page. And so just a couple quick notes here. So our node is working, we have one online, we have 4 CPUs, we have 14 gigs of memory, and basically a 1 terabyte hard drive. And so when we make our VMs, we want to limit it to 4 VMs because we have 4 CPUs. If you have hyper-threading, you can do 8. You can do more VMs than you have CPUs, but you don't want to do that because it will dramatically slow down how the VMs function. So next we want to go over to this area. So basically click on Data and then PVE. And so for you won't have these installed yet, but I do. So basically I've installed Ubuntu and I have 2 OMVs running, or not running. So only when the green arrow is there is it running. These 2 are not running. Click on the PVE to open this up, and then the local PVE is the hard drive. If we click on content, and then we can see I've uploaded some different ones here. So how you upload a ISO is you actually download it to your local hard drive on your computer, and then click upload here and then select file, and it will go to your local hard drive. And then you pick out one that you would like to upload, and then click open and then upload, and then that will show the uploaded ISO in this list right here. Next, how we actually install ISO is we click on it, and then we actually click Create VM. And so here it says 103, and if you take a look over here, it just goes in order. There we have 100, 101, 102, and so the next thing on the list would be 103, so it goes right there. We're going to install Openmediavault, so we're going to call this Openmediavault 4.1. Then we're going to hit next. And so that's on our local disk. And so then we just have to pick out the image. We're going to click on Openmediavault. And it is a Linux one, and it's that kernel. You can choose other ones such as Microsoft or Solaris. In the future, I'll do a video about installing Microsoft Windows if people are interested. Then click next. And so for install disk, we're just going to have 4 gigabyte install disk, and we can leave everything else the same. Click next, and so we just have 1 CPU, so there's just 1 socket, and it's 4 cores, but we're just going to use 1 core for the CPU. And we're going to increase this to 2 gigs for the memory. And then click next. And network we want to leave as virtual, and then click next. And this window we can confirm it. And so now we're going to click finish. And so now if you look over here, it says 103, and there it just changed to OMV 4.1. And so we're going to go to hardware, and we're going to actually add a second hard disk. And so here you can see we just have the 4 gig hard disk, and so Openmediavault needs at least 2 disks. So 1 for the OS and 1 for the data. So we're going to click add and hard disk. You have to click the local LVM, and we're going to just make this 8 gigabytes for our second hard disk. Then click add. And now we're going to actually click Start. That's here in the top right. And then we're going to go back over here to the left, and we're going to watch that so for when it has a green arrow next to it. So once it does, then we can actually click on Console, and it will start to show Openmediavault installing. So this is just a normal install, and so I'm going to skip this part and show you when it's done. Once that's done installing, you can hit continue, but I'd like to show you one thing before we do that. If you go to Options over here and click on that, if you need to do the install over again, you're going to need to change the boot order, because once you do the installation, then it goes straight to the hard disk, then your CD-ROM and your network. So you would just change that to go back to booting from the image. Go back to the console. I'm going to hit continue. And now the system will reboot. Once that's done rebooting, you'll get to the login screen. And so now what you need to do is go over to your router, OMV4, and we go to that. So our initial username and password is admin and Openmediavault. Once you've typed in those, click login. And so now you can see we're in our Openmediavault system. Here you can see it says KVM processor. And so that's because it's in the virtual machine and it's KVM. If we go down to our disks, you can see we have our 2 hard disks we added, and then there's a second one that's created by the virtual machine, or a third one, excuse me. What we want to do is add in that second, we'll add in our second drive there, and we'll just call that 8, and then we'll click OK. And yes, and it will format that drive, and then once that's done we click close, and then we need to mount that disk, and so we'll click on it to highlight it and then click mount and then apply and yes. And so now that drive is mounted, so now we can actually add in folders that we can then put on our system. So we'll just try that out here. Call that book. There's our drive. Everyone read write, and then click save. Apply and yes, and then you can see now we have our drive or our folder available, and we can actually even make that readable on our network if we go to SMB. And so next, let's look at what happens later on. So here you can see we have another system running. This is our Ubuntu one, and this is just the live CD. But if we want to actually start up an VM after we have it installed, we can click on it. And here you can see it's not working, but then we right click and click start and wait for the green arrow. And if we go back to the console just for a second, you can see the CPU, or to the summary for a second, we can see the CPU is working. Go back to the console, and you can see this version of OMV is now booting, and in a second we'll be able to log into it. And so there it is. And now if we go over to our device list, it's down here in the bottom. Gonna go to that, and again we log in as admin and Openmediavault. Click enter, and so now again you can see it says KVM processor, and so now you can see we have actually 2 Openmediavaults working on the same machine. So here's the first one, there's the second one, and we have an Ubuntu working on there too. So basically we have 3 different operating systems working on the same machine at this moment. And so you can install any version of Linux that you want. It's pretty simple. And one last thing before we go down. So there's no actually shutdown button for Proxmox. And so if you do want to shut down your server for any reason, you need to go to the left here and click on PVE. And what you'll see is there's a shell there. So click on shell. And what you type in is shutdown -r and then now, and what that will do, it will shut down all the VMs, then it will shut down the computer, and then hit enter. So that's the beginnings of Proxmox in a nutshell. And if you found this video helpful, make sure you give it a like, and if you are interested in seeing more videos from us, make sure you subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.